Quick thought experiment. Think about the last time you tried to do something new and you were actually pretty decent at it in private or practicing alone, rehearsing in the car, running through it in your head. And then the second someone was watching you, it's like you've never done it before. Maybe it was a presentation. Maybe it was a new skill you've learned. Or maybe it was a jump you've landed 100 times until suddenly there was a judge sitting there with a clipboard. We've all had that moment, and almost everybody walks away from it telling themselves the exact same story. I'm not ready. I choked. I did it wrong. I can't do it. I want to spend today's episode taking that story apart because I don't think it's true. I think something else entirely is happening in that moment. Something a lot more fixable than I'm just bad under pressure. Welcome back to the Anti-Fragile Mindset. I'm Christine Reeves Beleznay, skater, figure skater, coach, and author and high-performance mindset coach. And here's the thing about me you should know. If you're new to the show, I spend half my life on and off the ice with athletes and the other half in discussions with high-performing execs. And people are always a little surprised that those two worlds have so much overlap. And they shouldn't be surprised. It's the same brain in both arenas. It just wears different outfits. And so today we're talking about something that shows up the second anybody tries to get good at something tough. Why does learning feel so much harder right when you're closest to getting it? Let's get into it. Here's what I see constantly in every arena that I work in. Someone is doing genuinely fine with a new skill, in practice, in rehearsal, behind closed doors. And then the moment it counts, their body just stops cooperating. And their conclusion is always some sort of version of something's wrong with me. And I want to offer you a different read on that. What's happening is not a technique or ability problem. Your brain misreading a tough moment as a dangerous one or as a threat, and then doing exactly what it's designed to do about danger, which is slam on the brakes, freeze up, rush through to get it over with. And here's the part that trips people up. It doesn't start in your body. We assume it does. Your legs get heavy, your chest feels tight, breathing gets short and quick, and then your brain panics because your body's panicking. It's actually the other way around. It starts with a single thought, something small, almost too quick to notice. What if I mess this up? What if they're judging me? What if they don't like me? And that thought pings an alarm system in your brain before you've even consciously registered you're scared. Think of it less like a brain part and more like an overzealous bodyguard or a hypersensitive smoke detector. Its entire job is to scan for threats and sound the alarm the second it thinks it's found a threat. The problem is that system genuinely cannot tell the difference between you're in physical danger or you might just be embarrassed in front of other people. Both trip the same protective alarm. So a thought triggers the alarm, the protective mechanism. Then the body reacts. In that order, not the other way around. And once you know the order, I did it wrong stops being the inner chatter headline. That inner chatter headline then becomes my protective alarm went off over something that isn't actually a threat. I'm okay. So let me give you an example because this shows up everywhere. The figure skater who lands their jumps in practice and then struggles to stand up in their program. The gymnast who sticks a landing 100 times in an empty gym and then completely blanks the second a judge so much as glances up at them. The hockey player who can slot a shot into an empty net all day long in practice and then in a shootout with the whole rink watching suddenly hesitates. And in the corporate world, the executive can walk their team through a brilliant strategy with total confidence, and then goes to present the exact same presentation to their boss and the executive board, and suddenly sounds like they've never read the document they wrote. Different rooms, different outfits, same brain, doing the same thing every single time, reading "this matters" as "this is dangerous, it's a threat," and then slams on the brakes right when you need your foot on the gas. If you just recognized yourself in one of those examples, good. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just human. So let's talk about what to do about that. So let's talk about actually what to do in that situation. So as we unpack this protective mechanism for a second, because understanding it changes how you deal with it. Your brain has this small structure, you've heard of it, it's called the amygdala. And I'd like to think of it less in a fancy neuroscience term and more like that one overly cautious bodyguard who thinks every plan is going to end in disaster. Its job is to scan for threat all day, every day, and yell danger the second something looks unfamiliar or is a high stakes moment. Here's the catch. That system was built for actual physical danger. A predator, a cliff edge, a house on fire, something that could genuinely hurt you. It was never built to distinguish from, I might look silly in front of people, or I might not be good enough, or I might fail, and how that would make me feel. To your nervous system, unfamiliar and high stakes is unfamiliar and high stakes, whether it's a fire, a competition, game, or presentation. So the alarm goes off. And once it does, your body follows orders. It braces, it tenses, it grips a little too hard. Your muscles get stiff. Your golf swing gets short. Your voice in that hard conversation or presentation can get a little bit tight, crackly, and quiet. Not because you forgot how to do it, but because a split second earlier, your brain decided this moment needed defending against, and your body just followed instructions. Here's the good news hiding inside of all of that. If the problem lived in your technique, you'd have to rebuild the actual skill every time this happened. That would be slow and exhausting, and honestly, kind of discouraging. But if the problem is your brain miscategorizing hard, difficult, or challenging as dangerous, well, that's trainable. That's a conversation you can have with yourself in real time that more reps can't fix. You don't need to silence the alarm completely. You just need to teach it that this particular kind of hard isn't the emergency or life and death situation it thinks it is. And so a little story from behind the spotlight. This story I tell in more detail in my book, Glitz and Grit Beyond the Spotlight. But I wanted to share a piece of it with you here. There was a competition a number of years ago that we were invited to. It was the US Improv Professional Competition, where we had an hour to listen to a new piece of music and to work out a framework of a program on the floor. Then we were given an hour on the ice to put it all together. A piece of music we've never skated to before, and all in front of a full stadium audience. Not only that, it was televised live across the whole of the USA. Just a little pressure. We choreographed the program with various lifts and throws that we'd done in other shows 1,000 times. We were almost done. The program had been going smoothly. The audience was applauding and seemed to be really enjoying it, until it came to one of the most difficult lifts in our repertoire. Just as we set up to do the lift, and in that fraction of a second before the takeoff, a thought ripped through my mind. I hope we don't blow this. My body tightened just ever so, and that affected the timing of the lift, and it went up slightly off balance. My partner had to use all of his strength to push that lift up over his head. And as the lift came down, it came down very awkwardly. and I could hear the deafening silence of the audience as we quickly tried to recover. I'd done that lift so many times in practice and in hundreds of shows that my body basically ran on autopilot. I don't know why in that moment I decided to worry about whether or not we could do it or not. But in that split second, my brain apparently decided that this was going to be the moment to remind me that people were watching. And I could feel it happen in that real time, that shift from moving and being in flow to suddenly thinking about a terrible outcome. And the second I started thinking about it, instead of just doing it, I got stiff. And the timing was off. I wasn't performing in that moment. My brain was defending itself from a perceived threat that was, in reality, just a wonderful audience who was actually really generous with their applause and enjoying their evening. At the time, I thought that meant I'd failed. I thought it meant I hadn't trained enough, hadn't practiced hard enough, that I wasn't ready, that I didn't belong on that ice with those Olympic skaters. And it took me a long time and a lot of work from both sides of the boards, coaching as well as competing personally, to understand what happened to me that day wasn't a lack of ability, it wasn't lack of training or strength. It was a very normal nervous system doing a very normal thing, but at a very inconvenient time. I write a lot more about that shift from something's wrong with me to something predictable is happening to me in my book, along with a handful of other moments I probably wouldn't have told anybody about 10 years ago. So if you want the fuller story, along with the framework that I built afterwards to not only rise to elite levels in my profession, but to help young athletes and high-performing business professionals how to navigate those mentally challenging moments, Glitz and Grit Beyond the Spotlight is available at Indigo Barnes & Noble and on my website, christinereeves.ca. It's not a highlight reel. It's the actual behind-the-scenes version of my falling, rising, and reinventing, and how you can learn from that. Here's the one thing I want you to walk away with today, to give it a try so that you can see for yourself that mindset training and mental tools really are helpful and do work. It's called naming the alarm, and it takes about 3 seconds. The next time you feel that stiffness creep in, right before the moment that really counts, I want you to say silently or even out loud if you're alone, one sentence. That's my protective alarm going off, not a threat, I'm okay. That's it. Here's why it works. Without turning this into a whole neuroscience lecture, the second you name what's happening, you shift it from something happening to you, I'm falling apart, I'm failing, into something you're observing. Oh, there's that alarm going off again. That tiny shift moves you out of pure reaction and back into a little bit of choice. You can't outmuscle your mental bodyguard, but you can absolutely talk it down once you recognize it for what it is. Try it this week. It doesn't have to be in a competition or on a big stage, or even in front of a big group of people. Try it in something smaller, maybe a hard conversation, or a new task at work or school, or even a new, more challenging skill in your sport. Whatever your version of this moment really counts for me, whatever that looks like this week, give it a try. So just notice it and then name it. And then notice what happens next. That's the tool. But it's just part of a whole group of tools that take a little bit more time than 30 minutes to teach and learn. It's a much longer conversation and one that I tailor to your specific needs when we work one-on-one. If this episode named something you've been feeling and couldn't quite explain or knew how to overcome, that's exactly the kind of thing I help people work through. So I offer a free 20-minute coaching consultation. If you want to talk through what this actually looks like for you specifically, there's a link in the show notes, or you can find it at christinereeves.ca/coaching. And if you're not ready for a conversation yet and just want some tools to start with on your own, I've got some mindset resources on my website, christinereeves.ca/resources. No pressure, just genuinely useful starting points. So let's head over to the Coach's Corner for a minute. Okay, coaches, this section's for you. If you've got an athlete who's suddenly falling apart on something that they clearly already know how to do, please resist the urge to just say, do it again. More reps at a skill they already have isn't addressing what's actually happening. You'll wear them out, and worse, you'll quietly confirm the story they're already telling themselves, that something's wrong with them or their ability. Instead, try naming it for them out loud before they even ask. Something as simple as, hey, that tension you're feeling right now, that's completely normal. That's your brain treating this like it really matters, which is okay because it does, but it's not proof you can't do it. You'd be amazed how much that one sentence can take the intensity of the fear or worry out of this dynamic. It takes the doubt, the fear, or the embarrassment out of the moment. And these emotions are the things that actually make performance worse, not the nerves themselves. And give them permission to be a little imperfect on the first attempt after a really hard miss. Athletes who feel like every single rep has to be flawless end up more braced and tense and less confident. As we head over to the Parents' Corner, this one's for you, parents. I know how hard it is to watch your child fall apart on something you've literally watched them do perfectly 100 times in practice. Your instinct is probably to either reassure them, you've got this, you're so ready, you can do it, or to problem solve on the spot. And I gently ask you to hold off on both, at least for the first few minutes after they've missed it. What's happening for your athlete in that moment isn't a confidence problem you can talk them out of on the spot. And it isn't a skill problem either. It's their nervous system misreading, this matters to me, as this is dangerous. That's not something logic fixes in the car ride home. What tends to help more is simply naming it without trying to immediately solve it. Something like, that's such a normal thing to happen when something matters to you. It doesn't mean anything about how ready you are to achieve it. Then let it sit. You don't have to fix the feeling in that moment. Just help them understand it's not a verdict or judgment on them. The single most useful thing you can offer your child here isn't a pep talk. It's just accurate information about what's happening inside them. So they stop adding, something's wrong with me, on top of a moment that was already difficult enough. So let's wrap it up. When learning something new suddenly feels harder than it should, more often than not, that's not your technique failing. That's your brain misreading a difficult moment as a dangerous one. And once you can name it in real time, you get some of your power back in that moment. If today's conversation resonated with you and you're looking for some more support, I'd love to continue that conversation. And you'll find mindset resources for skaters, parents, and coaches that you can start using right away on my website, www.christinereeves.ca/resources. If you're looking for a more personalized support, contact me for a 20-minute coaching conversation where we talk about your goals, the challenges you're facing, and how mindset training can become part of your performance journey. You can learn more about that at christinereeves.ca/coaching. And if you enjoyed today's Behind the Spotlight story, I think you'll really enjoy my memoir, Glitz and Grit Beyond the Spotlight. It's filled with stories from my many years of touring professionally and competing around the world, and the mindset lessons that came from those experiences. Lessons that continue to shape the way I coach today. The book is available through Indigo, Barnes & Noble, and directly from my website, christinereeves.ca. Next episode, we're going to talk about something a lot of you have asked me to talk about. What to do when that stiffness shows up mid-performance, not just before it. So if today was about the moment before, next week is about the moment you're already inside of. You won't want to miss it. Thank you for spending this time with me today on the Anti-Fragile Mindset podcast. Until next time, keep your grit, keep your glitz, and I'll see you soon.